You can call the Conservative Commandos Radio Show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with your host, Rick Trader, every day, and your co-host for today on Wednesdays, John Mosley. And we're going to welcome our next guest and get right in, Colonel John Warden. Colonel John A. Warden III is credited by Norman Schwarzkopf and Colonel Colin Powell as the architect of the Desert Storm Air Campaign. The Desert Storm Air Campaign was based on Colonel Warden's revolutionary concept of the enemy as system, in which military forces are considered parts of a much larger whole. He wrote the seminal work on modern air power theory, the Air Campaign, Planning for Combat, which has been translated into at least 7 languages. He is also the author of Winning in Fast Time. Colonel Warden has been Special Assistant to the Vice President of the United States, Commandant of the Air Force's Command and Staff College, successful business founder, and Air Force Fighter Wing Commander. Welcome to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show, Colonel Warden.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, to jump right in here, obviously, our whole world is paying attention, is looking at what's going on in Iraq and wondering, among many other things, not only what should be done, but what can be done. And you developed many of the innovative strategies that nobody thought could be done in the past. So I wanted to get your thoughts. I'm sure you've been probably watching the news with as much interest as anyone, and what you think is happening and what you think maybe we should do, particularly in the standpoint of, is there anything we can do without a full-scale invasion of boots on the ground?
Well, yeah, actually, I think that there's quite a bit that we can do, but we need to think about it in probably a little bit different way. So I would begin by saying that these ISIS guys obviously are pretty tough, pretty competent, but they have put themselves into a position which is quite vulnerable. That is that they stretch from Syria over almost to the Iran border, and that they have people who are not friendly to the south of them, to the north of them, to the east of them, to the west of them. So if we can take advantage of that a little bit, we can probably put them in a position that would simply be impossible for them to maintain, and without doing much in the way, I think, from a United States military standpoint.
Well, the theory is, and I think one of the differences in what you planned with the Persian Gulf War is the difference between perhaps just making life miserable for them, or actually changing some of the outcome. I mean, you presented the theories that you might want to go into a little bit about viewing the enemy as a system.
Right. So the answer is that I'm not talking about making life uncomfortable for these guys, but actually putting them into an impossible position, which is obviously where you'd like them to be. So the concept of the enemy as a system says that rather than thinking about military operations as something where armies fight armies and air forces fight air forces and so on and so forth, what you're really trying to do and to think through is how you can incapacitate, how you can destroy the functioning of your opponent from a system standpoint, which means reducing or eliminating the leadership capability, which means making it difficult for them to communicate, make it difficult for them to get supplies, ammunition, food, pay, a whole variety of other things like that. And this ISIS group is really in an extraordinarily vulnerable position from that standpoint.
Is that partly because their current positioning is so fresh, so new?
Yes, in part, but think a little bit about what the real situation is. On the one side, that they are anchored in the northeastern part of Syria, which is a little bit shaky, and they are just south of the Turks, who apparently are getting to be a little bit upset with them. And then their holdings in Iraq stretch across what is really barren and desert kind of a country and they occupy some towns, but those towns are separated by fairly decent distances. So they really have a very, very difficult position, and one that's especially easy to deal with or is manageable from an air operation standpoint, if nothing else.
You know, I have felt, and I'm the name escapes me who we were talking to about strategy on the show about a month ago. I think the average person really doesn't understand, and I struggle to understand, that the outcomes here are not automatic, and there's a big difference. And I think it certainly feels to an awful lot of people like, you know, this is heading towards the helicopter off the roof of the embassy. And what do you think about, you know, maybe it depends on what we do a great deal, but what do you think about the situation here?
Well, so one, we need to think a little bit about what's really important to us, and if we try to say that it's important to us to maintain for indefinitely Iraq as an integral state, even though that it really isn't particularly old as a state, or if we insist on the government of Iraq being inclusive or something of that sort. We're taking on something that's pretty tough to do. If, on the other hand, we say we want the maximum amount of stability in that area, which probably means a solid Kurdistan, which probably means something reasonably solid from Baghdad south, and then that area in the middle is something that can get compressed and can go away in one form or another over some reasonable period of time. But it's really important to know what our objectives are, and so far I haven't heard much from the administration in terms of anything that makes sense from a realistic geopolitical standpoint.
Well, and I wonder if you remember, if you were involved, the resistance to some of that before was, I think, like having a stable Kurdistan. Turkey didn't like that, right? So there was a lot of wishes, my words, I'm looking at, maybe there's a lot of political wishes that various players have to maybe give up.
Well, you know, your point is excellent on Turkey, and in fact, if this had happened 10 years ago, that the Kurdish problem would be significantly different. But literally within the last few days, the Turkish government has said it was up to the Kurds to decide what kind of government they wanted. Likewise, that all of a sudden the Turks have recognized that this ISIS group, and in fact probably the majority of the people that are fighting in Syria, are not very nice people, and that they are enemies of Turkey. So Turkey, I suspect, is going to come to get involved in this thing fairly quickly. And after all, they've had quite a number of their own citizens and truckers that have been kidnapped by the ISIS group. So Kurdistan, I think, is feasible now. It wasn't if the Turks were going to oppose it, but they've given it their approval for them to move on with it.
Now, one of the things that I want to ask, and we're going to have a 2-minute break coming up pretty soon here, is have you been watching or hearing anything about the capture of our equipment? I think that's something that really just, you know, hits me in the gut, is supposedly 72 tanks have fallen into hands of ISIS. I don't know if we know that for sure, but what are your thoughts on that, and what do you think we could or should do to at least destroy our own equipment in the hands of the wrong hands?
Well, whether they have actually captured the tanks, and if they have, whether they could actually maintain them for more than a day or two, I don't know. They certainly have a bunch of Humvees. They probably have some captured artillery and other things like that. To the extent that the people, that the Syrians, the Turks, the Kurds, the Iranians, and so on, need some help, one of the things we clearly could do is to mount a very limited air operation, and I mean limited from the standpoint that there's not a big set of targets, where that the objective really was to go out and find that kind of stuff and take it out. And that's a fairly straightforward kind of thing to do, and it doesn't require intricate and difficult kind of intelligence in populated areas and so on.
And one thing that it occurs to me is that perhaps reluctant political leaders can draw a distinction between an all-out involvement and simply, erasing those from the battlefield, perhaps. Anyway, can we go ahead and take a 2-minute break here? Can you hold on for us?
Will do.
Thanks. Rick Trader.
All right, we are going to take a break right now. You're listening to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with Jonathan Mosley and Rick Trader, coming to you from the CCRS studios, that of WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, the way we do Monday through Friday from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern, and of course around the world on the internet. Hey, you can hear our show anytime, day or night, from any telephone by calling 832-999-1199. Please don't go away. John and I will be right back to continue our conversation with our guest. Thank you.
I really don't care. That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but oh, how I'm longing for the day when I'm back at Orchid Bay, where the silver water glistens in the sun.
When is the last time you raced a small boat across wide open water? Tired of snow, traffic jams, cold weather? You need a refreshing change of scenery, a world away. The Bahama Islands have vacation rental homes and apartments. Enjoy spectacular nature in the Abacos Islands. Enjoy refreshing Caribbean beauty, fishing, snorkeling, scuba, the beach. www.enjoyabaco.com. That's ABACO. EnjoyAbaco.com.
As I sail across the sea of Abaco, the smiling comes I know, only one more mile to go.
EnjoyAbaco.com.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glassboro, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Viden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glassboro, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
You can call the Conservative Commandos Radio Show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with Jonathan Mosley and Rick Trader. And a program note, if you'd like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show at 10:10 this evening Eastern Time, log on to patriotsride.org. And for rebroadcast of yesterday's show at 5 p.m. this afternoon, when our live broadcast ends, please log on to cprworldwidemedia.com. And if you'd like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show tomorrow afternoon, place for that is at Vigilant Liberty US. And our guest this segment is Colonel John Warden. He was credited by Norman Schwarzkopf and Colin Powell as the architect of the Desert Storm Air Campaign. Colonel, thanks for holding through the break. We appreciate your time.
Happy to do it.
Colonel, what is the status of the Iraqi Air Force at the present time?
As far as I can tell, it is a little shaky, and they're probably for a couple reasons. One of which was that the Iraqis had a pretty good Air Force before the first Gulf War, weren't able to do a whole lot in the time between the first and the second, and then we deliberately destroyed the Iraqi Air Force after the second Gulf War, and then they gave that last priority in rebuilding. So they don't have a lot of equipment. They got a lot of skill. They got a lot of will, but they don't have much in the way of equipment to go out and do the kinds of things that I know that they would like to do.
Things that they're now looking for the United States to do.
Yes, but I think that it's really important as we're thinking about this to think about one of the really important ideas of strategy, and that is anytime you can find somebody else to do your fighting for you, that's a pretty good deal.
Right.
And there are some pretty competent air forces that are in that vicinity. The Turks, the Syrians, not too bad, and the Iranians. And maybe what we could really be doing before we necessarily get into combat operations is to provide all of those people with some fairly decent intelligence and maybe even a little bit of help with some coordination, and let them do the work for us rather than us thinking we've got to do it all ourselves.
I think the Kuwaitis learned that lesson. Colonel, the reason I ask you about the Iraqi Air Force is that I heard a report today that it was recommended, an airstrike was recommended on the ISIS forces as they were in camps, in staging camps along the Syrian-Iraqi border. Do we let the worms out of the can? Did we let things go too far by not attacking ISIS before they crossed the border while they were still in camps?
Well, yes, probably from a couple senses, and one of the things that we need to do a little bit of rethinking about real quickly is our attitude towards Syria and Assad. My enemy's enemy is my friend, and Assad has pretty good location to do a lot of damage to these ISIS guys, and especially their supply area. So ideally, he would have taken care of them, but probably he needs a little bit of encouragement in order to do so. Now the cat is out of the bag, but again, simply because of the terrain that the ISIS guys are operating in, that I don't think that it's a difficult thing to certainly to stop them and to begin to reverse them, but keeping in mind that it looks like quite a number of the Sunni cities that stretch across that narrow belt have probably surrendered to ISIS and probably are not all that unhappy with the fact that they are regaining some of the power or influence or position that they lost in the second Iraq War.
Well, Colonel, when you're talking about Assad, that's the guy that good old Barack Obama wanted to get rid of a few months ago, and now do you ever expect Barack Obama to be going to Assad looking for a little help there?
I'm not sure that Assad would be real enthusiastic about helping, but it's the same situation for him. He's got a serious problem. He'd like to get the thing solved. Happens to be a problem that's common to us and to our other friends in the area. So, if you think about doing deals with guys, doing a deal with Assad strikes me as being significantly less odious than doing a deal with Joseph Stalin in 1941.
Great analogy. Colonel, one last thing before I throw you back over to John Mosley. John Kerry, just as I was leaving for the studio today, John Kerry was interviewed. He's over there now. And I'm going to paraphrase what he said because I didn't get it all. He said today that basically fighting back against ISIS would be nothing but a Band-Aid solution, but a real solution would be a political understanding and agreements. Colonel, can you ever see a time that we can be productive over there unless those people feared us? And do you really think that there's going to be a time that any political solution is going to happen over there unless they do fear us?
I think it's a matter probably of a combination of respect, which obviously has a fear in it. The problem that I have with our Secretary of Defense is that I think that he's living in some kind of a dreamland where if he just says a few nice words that the people that have been fighting each other for 1,500 years are all of a sudden going to love each other. And, how they run their business, and if there's a Shia government, there's a Shia government. If there's a Kurd government, there's a Kurd government. That's their problem. It's not our problem. As long as they don't mess with us, and as long as they don't give any training or support places to another Al-Qaeda group that's going to lead an attack on the United States. We've got to get realistic and stop this nonsensical Wilsonian kind of stuff that we've been doing for the last 5 years.
All right, well, excuse me, Colonel Warden. First, why don't you give out your website where you are currently busy so people can follow along, and make sure I don't forget to do that.
Right, I appreciate that. The website is Venturist, which is VENTURIST.com.
And you do a lot of consulting and training along lines of your ideas here. Is that right?
That's correct. Mostly in the commercial world, but what we found is that the strategy ideas that work very well in military competitions apply equally well strategically in business competition.
All right. Well, I'd wanted to ask some of the big questions, but not right at the break. So we talked about looking at the enemy as a system and seeing how to make them viable. What makes them viable and what they don't. And perhaps maybe with some restraint in your comments, what do you think we could do, especially as concerns people about whether they're boots on the ground, whether they're air power, what the United States or our allies could actually do? What would you be thinking about doing?
Well, what I would be thinking about doing is first of all, kind of being careful about saying, what do we really want to accomplish? And I think that the simple answer to that is a stable area without a strong Sunni radical state in the middle of Iraq. So that's what you'd be trying to produce. Then I'd be looking around to see, okay, who all has the capability to do something from a military standpoint, and then also political, but from a military standpoint against the ISIS group. And to me, that comes out to be the Syrians, the Turks, the Kurds, the Iranians, and the Iraqi government as it exists from Baghdad to the south. I think the combination of those, what they can do to affect all of the key aspects of ISIS as a system are pretty darn substantial, and there may be a handful of a little bit more technical things that we would want to do from an air power standpoint. But the idea of trying to put people on the ground there and to do a replay of the Iraq War, that just doesn't make any sense to me, and I don't think it's even remotely necessary.
But it does seem to me the dominant thinking here is it's futile, there's nothing we can do, and if we do something, it won't last anyway. And I think that is driving major decisions globally here, which is a shame. But your concept, I think, in the Persian Gulf air campaign was getting inside of their, I don't know how you put it, getting inside of their head, inside of their decision cycle. I guess we have 1 minute left here. The feeling that the ISIS is inevitable and a juggernaut, do you think we could change that dynamic and at least approach some stability?
I think it can be changed very quickly. The ISIS guys, from a variety of reasons, have achieved some sort of rapid successes, but in my view, it's for militarily especially, it's a flash in a pan kind of a thing, and they're extraordinarily vulnerable. It simply is not an overwhelming problem.
Well, I wish the leaders would call on you to consult in some way. Again, your website there is venturist.com. We got to go. Maybe we can thank you so much, Colonel Warden.
Hey, my pleasure. Good luck to you all.
Thank you.
All right, we are going to take a break, and you're listening to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with Jonathan Mosley and Rick Trader. And we're coming to you from the CCRS studios, that of WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, and around the world on the internet with our internet broadcast partners, CPRWorldwideMedia.com, PatriotsRide.org, VigilantLibertyRadio.us, and don't forget, you can hear our show anytime, day or night, from any telephone by calling 832-999-1199. Please don't go away. John and I will be right back with our next guest.
That's my prerogative.
They say I'm nasty, but
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811, PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
Oh, how I'm longing for the day when I'm back at Orchid Bay, where the silver water glistens in the sun.
When is the last time you raced a small boat across wide open water? Tired of snow, traffic jams, cold weather? You need a refreshing change of scenery, a world away. The Bahama Islands have vacation rental homes and apartments. Enjoy spectacular nature in the Abacos Islands. Enjoy refreshing Caribbean beauty, fishing, snorkeling, scuba, the beach. www.enjoyabaco.com. That's ABACO. Enjoyabaco.com.
As I sail across the Sea of Abaco, the smiling coast I know, only one more mile to go.
Enjoyabaco.com.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Viden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittlesportshop.com.
The Obama attack on our Constitution continues. Log on to INRASuperPAC.com and join J.D. Bonnier and Christina Lamb and hundreds of Reagan conservative commandos who demand our country return to its founding documents and principles. We are part of the nation's oldest and largest GOP volunteer organization, the National Federation of Republican Assemblies. We register voters, endorse conservative candidates, and dig deep to give you the truth on the big issues. We are fighting to do what Lincoln proclaimed 150 years ago. Let the people know the facts and the nation will be free. Help support the Conservative Commando Radio Show with your donation today. Log on to INRASuperPAC.com. INRASuperPAC.com.
Now hear this. Man your battle stations.
You can call the Conservative Commandos Radio Show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
And welcome back to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with Jonathan Mosley and Rick Trader. And a program note, if you'd like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show at 10:10 this evening Eastern Time, log on to patriotsride.org. That's patriotsride.org. And at 5 p.m., when our live broadcast ends, if you'd like to hear a replay of yesterday's show, log on to cprworldwidemedia.com. That's cprworldwidemedia.com. You could also hear a rebroadcast of today's show tomorrow afternoon at vigilantlibertyradio.us. And don't forget, you can hear our show anytime, day or night, by calling 832-999-1199. And you might want to check out our websites, conservativecommandosradioshow.com and ccrshow.com. Two different sites, different information on each one of them. And Jonathan, we are waiting for our next guest to link up with us on conference line.